The speaker that I've invited to be with us this morning, his name is Mike Bartel. We have some history together. Mike's dad was the pastor of this church when I came to faith in Jesus. I accepted Jesus as my Savior when his dad was preaching one night. Mike at the time was in high school. Mike was working at a restaurant at some point during that whole time called Bonanza, where Grandma Sharon's is right now. That's where I met Robin. Robin was his boss for a while, and my boss too. Don't go there. That was a long time ago, okay? I wear the pants in the family because she gives them to me. Just saying, all right? So anyway, Mike Bartel has been a part of Williston for a long, long time. Grew up here, graduated school here. Some of his classmates are here, were here in the last service. He knocked it out of the park, talking about his ministry, Free International. He's going to tell you more about Free International. Really, the passion of this ministry is we talk about missions. We think about missions maybe overseas in another country, another place. But when Jesus laid out the roadmap for missions, he says it starts right where you live. And Mike and his wife Denise and his two children do ministry in Las Vegas, Nevada, right here in the United States. And he's going to talk about human trafficking, the whole sex trade, and everything. I'm just telling you guys, this will grip your heart and grieve your spirit to know the depth and the darkness of sin and how one human being can treat another. But praise the Lord, God has sent us, all of us in this room as missionaries, into the world to go reach and seek and save that which was lost.
That's right.
We love Mike Bartel. He's going to do a phenomenal job. Mike, you have an incredible gathering of people listening to you. I think the best in Williston. Would you give it up for Mike Bartel, Free International?
Good morning. When my family first moved here in 1979, I was in 5th grade, and my bud that I got to meet in 5th grade, who was my best buddy, to this day is still my best friend. Man, that's a long time ago, man. That was 40 years ago. The Pittmans back here, best people I know in this world. I'm thrilled to be back in town, be able to spend time with them. I was noticing the card. I did in the first service, but the Connect card says, "Welcome home." And this is my home. I grew up here. I was formed here. Who I am as a person was crafted by maybe many of you in this room that I grew up with, and you invested in my life as a little kid, and growing up through high school and even working at the Bonanza under her leadership. She basically down here when that came up was like, "You weren't very good." That's what she told me, which is probably true, I barely remember those years. I remember when they started dating, though. I remember all about that. So it's weird to be down the road here when my parents moved to town with us. The church was over by what's now the middle school, next to that swimming pool, and I was in a parsonage that's there. It's no longer there. It got moved somewhere else in town. And, I did a lot of growing up in this city. I remember back in those days, we weren't allowed to go to movies, right? So I remember my buddy Sean and we were close. We did everything together, but we couldn't go to movies. And so I remember one day I decided to sneak to a movie, right? But I wasn't going to tell Sean because I didn't want him to get in trouble if I got in trouble. So I snuck to a movie. It was a movie I probably shouldn't have seen. It was Hoosiers, right? So I go sneak at Hoosiers. I'm sitting in the very back corner of the whole place, almost like it's a porn shop or something. I'm sitting way up there in the corner, and the movie's all done, and I don't know how good I feel about going to the movie, and I'm coming out of the balcony on one side of the stairs, and coming down the other side of the stairs, literally, this is the honest-to-God truth, at the same time as me was my buddy Sean Pittman, who was sitting in the other corner of the theater, huddled up in the corner like it was going on. And, that's how we grew up. So, all the evil I did in this world, I happened in here in Williston, North Dakota. But anyway, it's been a thrill to be back. I got in at 2 in the morning. We're a little sketchy on whether the flights were going to make it in, but, I would have walked here. I've been so excited to be back. Last month or so, we've been doing a lot of ongoing work or setup work here in the western part of North Dakota. We've been in Watford City. We were in Minot last week, and then next month we're working with North Dakota Human Trafficking Task Force. They're putting on a faith symposium on human trafficking in Bismarck. I'm going to say it out loud now, so so I can get back to it later. If I don't, you know it's coming on November 19th in Bismarck. I'll be speaking at the Faith Forum. There'll be a survivor of human trafficking there. There'll be a man who used to be a buyer of sex. He used to purchase sex all the time, and God has transformed his life. He's reformed. He's going to tell his story. It's going to be a great event. So November 19th, if you can make your way to Bismarck, or that's part of the trek, come on over, and it'll be a great event. But I don't know if there's any other Williston High School people here. I graduated Williston High School class of 1987. And when I came in the first service this morning, I had some classmates in the room. It made my day, so it was a lot of fun. But I want to thank you guys for inviting me into the room. I want to thank you guys for letting me come back. It's been great. It's been 5 or 6 years since we've been here. But I'm looking forward to being able to do work with you guys. Here in western North Dakota, we'll be doing some stuff in eastern Montana to reach those who are being exploited. On the day-to-day work, and we're going to pack some stories today. I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the stuff that's going on with Free. It's interesting to see how God directs our paths, right? I'm a little ADD, but I'm not afraid to say yes to stuff. And so, lo and behold, 30 years later, after starting to say yes to certain things, you end up doing, a lot of the work that we're doing right now. I had no clue growing up what was going on in this area of human trafficking. I didn't even know it was a thing. And then one day, my wife and I have been married 26 years to my wife, who's from western Montana. She was raised in Big Fork, which is one of the most beautiful places in the world. I have my son's going to turn 18 here next month. His name's Dylan Cash Bartel. How many of you guys know it's hard to name your kids? Or I thought it was, right? And there's few surprises left in the world. You watch on social media or whatever, and everybody does these gender reveals. Everybody's trying to outdo each other with gender reveals. We thought the coolest thing would be, the gender reveal would be when the baby comes out, you look down, you know it's a boy or a girl, right? That's what we thought would be fun. So we're waiting for that day, but we're trying to figure out how to name our first, and we didn't know if it was going to be, a baby was going to be a boy or a girl. So we came up with this system. If the baby was born as a girl, my wife got to name her. If it was born going to be a boy, I got to name the boy, right? So the day's coming, and, everybody we named it after, somebody from our family. But my grandpa and grandma's names were Ewalt and Vera. And they're like the best people I've ever known in my life, but I wasn't naming my kid Ewalt or Vera, right? That just wasn't going to happen. So I kept throwing out these names, and my wife would look at me, and she'd go, I used to date a guy with that name. Right? And that happened often. So either my wife dated a lot of dudes I don't know about, or I was bad at choosing names. And you don't want that guy running around the house the whole rest of your life, so you move on real quick. So I settled in on Dylan Cash. So he's named after Bob Dylan and Johnny Cash, right? Figure you can't go wrong with that. That's a good dude name. Actually, if you use the Gaelic, it means faithful peacemaker, which is good, right? If you use what it actually is in the Gaelic, it actually means greedy seafarer. so it's either faithful peacemaker or pirate, one of the two. But he turns 18 here soon. My daughter Veronica turns 14 in a week and a half, and they've just been a great family. My son turned 3 on the flight to India, where we started our work with human trafficking, working out of Southern Asia and India, starting in 2003, right in there. And my daughter was conceived in India. And so there's not a moment of their life where, we don't push all that's going on with this. We reserve, and we will this morning too, the real nastiness of some of the stories that come out in this. But it's just fun how God brings kids into your life that he's specially prepared for the type of work that you do. And how he and her have been able to minister to the kids in their own schools and be very present in their time of need, and how kids come to them, and and how they're able to help. Because there's a lot of kids going through a lot of stuff in our schools, right? One of the things we have going on, I'm going to say it right now with that in mind, is we have a school assembly program. In fact, it was like 4 years ago or so, we were in Williston with that school assembly program. But we just passed 500,000 students that the school assembly's been in front of over the last 4 to 5 years. There's a school assembly program recently. And this year we had the school assembly team has 4 presenters. It's presenter-driven. It's high-end media stuff. The media is all in 3D. It's all blingy. But they've done 3 weeks worth of school assemblies, been in front of, I think, almost 30,000 students. And this fall already, just in the month of September, the school assemblies, out of those school assemblies, 9 traffic victims were identified and recovered and getting the help they need. 9, just out of the schools. And not only that, 65 kids who were in really rough situations. They were being abused, molested, whatever, in their homes. That triggered a mandatory report. They were also identified and are receiving the help they need. So the school assembly program has seen 75 kids just this fall so far who are out of exploitive situations and receiving help, right? Amen. Amen. In all the work that we do, and I'm going to unpack some of what free means and some of the work that we're doing. I remember I had a friend, this issue of human trafficking is not a new one. It was obviously made illegal to own slaves in our country back with the 13th Amendment, the Emancipation Proclamation. But I had a friend of mine he's a historian, and he gave me a book that he found at a bookstore. And he handed it to me, and the name of the book was How to Prevent the Traffic in Young Girls. And as I opened it up, it was a fragile book. The publication date of that book was 1899. 1899. So less than 40 years after our country outlawed slavery, there was conferences, just like the one in November that is going to happen, being held on how to address the issue of slavery here in the United States. Now, throughout history, it has pretty much exclusively been a people of faith that when exploitation like this has happened, that the people of God stood up and said, this is not going to happen. Not anymore, not on our watch. The Underground Railroad was almost exclusively littered with people who were in our churches, people who were followers of Christ, who recognized that every person was created in God's image to declare His glory to this world. And because of that, they were willing to risk their own lives and reputation. They used their own resources to be able to help those who were being exploited just because of the color of their skin or where they came from. The time is ready and now again for that to happen, right? This is not okay with me. I know it's not okay with you. The awesome thing about God is you have a Mission Sunday here. You see the flags represented all over this room. Is that God always calls the people out of darkness to be light wherever that gospel needs to be found. And where there's a lack of that gospel, that is why we have missions. That we send those into that darkness who can minister to those from that culture, that people group, so that in that country none will perish. God called all of us out of darkness if we're following Christ, brought us into light so that we might be light to this world. That's why we still sit here, right? That's why He didn't just throw us into heaven after we've all of a sudden made the right choice. It's because He wishes none should perish. So that now we are in the light. It is who we are as new creations in Christ to be Jesus to the rest of this world so that all might know Him. That's what we do, and that's how we structured Free. But as I got this book and recognized that this is not a new thing, it always keeps you humble, right? This whole growth of a knowledge of human trafficking here is basically about 20 years in the making. In fact, the laws on human trafficking in the United States are not even 20 years old, the federal laws. They're brand new. But it's not a brand new issue, right? These new laws had to be made because we were defining slavery like it used to be when somebody had a pink slip in their hand, like you were a car that you could own somebody. Only the rich could afford. But now it's all a matter of manipulation, exploitation, force, fraud, all that stuff coming into play. There's no real tangible ownership, although there is real control and ownership of the people that we are called to serve. And this book from 1899 said the exact same things. In fact, back then, they're like, look, everybody wants to talk about the rescues, and we all do rescue work. Everyone in that room that was part of that conference. But what nobody wants to talk about is how do we prevent this from happening in the first place, right? I find that hugely important because we're in a church. The church elevates how important the family is and how we need to love each other and how we're investing in our kids and our families. You guys know what the number one risk factor for those who are being exploited through human trafficking in the world are? The number one risk factor? It's not race, right? It's not socioeconomic. It's self-esteem, right? Self-esteem is the number one vulnerability and risk factor. So out of all the girls we've ever worked with, we've worked with young ladies whose families were incredibly wealthy. We've worked with families that were incredibly poor and everywhere in between. And I didn't say this in the morning service. I don't know why God has me saying it now, but I think it's incredibly important that as you're connected to this community of faith, that you can continue to be and you get plugged in and that we become better husbands to our wives, right? Better fathers to our children. Because even if we love our kids, our daughter, if anybody got daughters in here? Fathers with daughters too? Where there is an absence of your appropriate love in that relationship, somebody will come in and fill that role, right? It's important for us to be very present in our families' lives. In fact, I read an article recently, most boring thing I've ever read in my entire life. Powered through it, like 6 Red Bulls to get through 20 pages, right? It was so boring. It was an economics article from the University from NYU in New York. So it was economists writing about human trafficking from an economic standpoint, because they're like, how do we take the money out of this so that it no longer becomes profitable in a way that can kill human trafficking, right? That's good for an economic person to think that way. So these are PhD people, blah, 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 in economics. So they do this whole paper. It's like 30, 40 pages long, economics paper. And in their main takeaways, at the end of this economics article, the main takeaway was this. They're like, you know how we pull the money out of this is that families stick together. This was not a morality paper. It was an economics paper. From NYU people, right? So New York people. That husbands and wives have lots of sex together, right? No dude saying amen to that. You got to say amen that, right? That the dads are present in the family, showing appropriate affection to their daughters. That is how we defeat human trafficking from an economic standpoint. I find that interesting because as we sit here in a church, that's something the church for generations has always kind of put front and center. The church, the family structure, the importance of community, where we are interacting in appropriate ways, and I find that important. So as we sit here today, there's a lot of things that screw that up. You know, if we're in here, like pornography. Porn is a big problem with trafficking. In fact, in many ways, if you go to the legal definition of human trafficking, porn is human trafficking, right? And I cannot tell you the number of girls that we've recovered that were also forced to do porn, right? And the truth of the matter is there's no way to know, none, zero, if what you are looking at on that screen is being performed by somebody who's there of their own free will, right? And so it's important for us, and again, this is something else I didn't say this morning at all. I hope we're okay with this, that it's important for us to recognize that God has bigger and greater and mightier things for you as an individual. This is not meant to throw shame our way, but it's meant for us to recognize that the stuff we do behind a computer or on our phone, in our own truck or in our own house is not victimless. It's important for us to realize that demand drives the growth of this problem in our world. Human trafficking is the second largest criminal enterprise in the world right now, only behind drugs. And it's growing at a faster rate because people are reusable, drugs aren't, right? Law enforcement tells me everywhere I go that everywhere drugs are being sold, a child, a girl is being sold as well. Anybody hear the latest word on drugs in this area? It's pretty bad, isn't it? There's a problem out here, and it's on our doorstep. And again, that's a heavy burden for us, but it's not really a burden because God called us out of darkness into light to be light to this world. Human trafficking is a great evil, but you know what? God is bigger than that evil, right? And God uses, we all need good tools to do good work. God's tool to reach this world is right here. We are God's instrument to reach the world, small and great alike. From the richest executive working in the oil industry to a young lady working in a legal brothel of Nevada, God wishes that none should perish. And we are all representation of that, and we are also the tool he uses to pursue that task, that all might know him. And so when we started Free International, it was with the church as the centerpiece, church at the center of all this. It's God's chosen agency to reach the world. And FREE is our acronym, which stands for Find, Restore, Embrace, and Empower. The first thing we needed to do is be able to find those who are being exploited. When we lived in India, it wasn't hard to see. We'd have whole, basically cities full of young ladies who were being exploited. People from Europe and Western part of the world flying in as tourists to have these young ladies service them, and people within that country. It was horrible, it was evil. But it looked different than it does here, although Las Vegas can look like that a little bit. On any given night in Las Vegas, the Metropolitan Police Department tells us there's 35,000 people being commercially sold for sex in some way in Las Vegas on any given night. You know, that's escorts, that's dancing, that's all those things that would be tied to commercial sex. 35,000 on any given night. And yet, I was doing some research recently, just a few days ago, and a lot of what happens in the selling of people happens online, right? That's where you find people. And Nevada has the highest number of online sex ads per capita in the country by far. You know what's second? North Dakota. It is important for us as a church to be present with each other, invested in each other's lives, because it's through that community that we show the rest of the world what a real community should look like. That we're invested in our families, we're invested in each other, we're connected to the people that we're working with, because God wishes that none should perish. So when we first started Free, we were looking at ways here in the United States to be able to find those being exploited. And early on, we connected with who became one of my best friends. His name was Brad Dennis. He has a background in naval intelligence. He was a master chief in the Navy, was being trained with SEAL Team 6 to be embedded as an intelligence officer in the most sensitive situations of our world. And when he retired from the Navy, he took over an organization called Class Kids, which was probably the premier missing child agency in the country. Every day in this country, 2,200 to 2,300 kids are reported missing every day. And those are just the ones that are reported. There's a ton, especially in Vegas, that their families don't even report that they're missing. 2,300 kids reported every day, and within 48 hours, 1/3 will have been approached by a exploiter, a pimp, somebody along those lines. That number goes up to 2/3 within 72 hours. So within 3 days of a child going missing who's not just leaving because mom wouldn't let them use the Xbox or whatever, or not couch surfing with their families, but real with their friends, real missing kids. Within 72 hours, that means annually up to 300,000 of our kids are either at high risk or being exploited through human trafficking every year in the United States. So it's important for us to be able to find them. Now, we don't just work with children. We don't just work with girls. Yesterday, while I was talking to right before I talked to Pastor Chris on the phone, we got a call from the National Hotline on a labor trafficking case. Somebody was being exploited, and likely being exploited both labor and sex. This happens everywhere all the time, but we need to be able to find, and Brad was our guy to be able to train us on how to identify some things and how it looked different than when we were working in Southern Asia. And so we started by doing some work around the Super Bowl. So we went to Miami, Fort Lauderdale for the Super Bowl in 2010. We mobilized about 60 people from a church just like this one. And over 3 days, those 60 people didn't work all 3 days. They worked 4-hour shifts. Over 3 days' time, we had been given all the missing kids from Miami that had been missing at least 3 months and were likely under somebody's control. And over 3 days' time, those 60 people on that first outreach we did cleared 3 precincts worth of missing kids off the books, right? Amen. And 7 traffic victims are recovered. through the process. And one pimp is still doing 20 to life for what he was doing to a couple of those girls. All because we were present in that community, right? That's turned into something more than just Super Bowl work. We have 12 cities lined up to do a thing we call the Big Search now. We got one coming up next week in Kansas City. We have 29 kids we're going to be looking for in Kansas City, and a lot of the cases that law enforcement is working on of girls we know that are being trafficked that are over 18. So out of this Big Search, we had 30 kids in this book in Las Vegas this last year. And out of the 30 kids that we were searching for in 72 hours, 24 of those kids were recovered for the glory of God, right? 9 traffic victims recovered, and this whole process has just really energized the city of Las Vegas. We have hundreds of people now that are active and helping us when we do searches. The cab company in Las Vegas, which has over 2,000 cab drivers, and puts on over 50 million miles a year in Las Vegas alone, is an official partner of ours. And anytime we do an event like this, every one of their cab drivers has all the kids that we're looking for. We've been gifted with facial recognition technology. All this stuff is being given to the work we're doing, and people go, man, how do you find 24 kids in 72 hours? We were looking for them, right? You can't find what you're not looking for. The simple act of seeking will reap great dividends. 1, because you can't find what you're not looking for. And 2, that's what God has for us to do. That's why he tells stories of the good shepherd who leaves the 99 to go find the one. And did he find the one? Yeah. Why? Because he was looking for him. And so the first thing we want to be able to do with the work of free is be able to identify and find those who are being exploited. We had a great story play out this last Big Search. We were doing some traditional ministry in a neighborhood of Las Vegas that's really difficult. In fact, it has the highest violent crime rate in the whole state. And we went into the neighborhood, we were telling our stories, we were hearing people's stories, praying with families, ministering. There's over 2,000 kids under the age of 18 that live on this one property of 900 plus weekly rentals. And when we got done, we went to the coffee shop across the street, the Starbucks. And as our team of people were in there, we had about 27, 28 men and women, all in shirts that said search team on it. The work we were doing at that time was very visible. We ordered our coffee. We're waiting in line for the coffee to get made. And in walks 3 girls. And the 2 girls on the outside point to the girl in the middle when their eyes got big and said, she's missing and she needs help. Well, she wasn't too thrilled that they just did that. But guess what? She was missing and she needed help. In fact, you can put her picture up here. We took her to the side, put her in the chair, had our people working with her, getting her story a little bit. She was 14 years old. She was pregnant with either her father's baby or her pimp's baby. And that's why she was missing. There was no safe place for her to be. But she was out of the frying pan right into the fire, right? She's 14 and on the street, needing help. So we started working with her, getting her story. Less than 5 minutes later, in walks this couple. And as this couple walks in, they look at the room, again, shocked look on their face, and both of them just start weeping instantly. We got a room full of people, actually just got done doing a lot of ministry and praying with people. We're all, hey, how can we help? What's going on? What's the problem? Well, come to find out they had been in town for 4 days, right in this neighborhood, knocking on doors, looking for their daughter, who was over 18. She was 19, but she was abducted. And they had been knocking on doors looking for her. They had guns pulled on them. They had all this stuff. But I don't know about you. If you got a kid and your kid goes missing, that gun means nothing to you, does it? You're going to find your kid, right? Right? And so they were at wit's end, though, because they had to go back. They took all their vacation time and everything to go find their daughter. They had to go back at least for a little bit to get things in order. And they had sat in the parking lot. Honest to God, they just sat in that Starbucks parking lot and prayed to God and said, God, you got to help us. You have to help us. We leave tomorrow. We're no closer to finding her than when we were. Help us. And so they walk in after saying a prayer to God, and what did they find in Starbucks? 27 bearded dudes, and not bearded women, but women, with search shirts on, willing to help them find their daughter. So we begin to help them. They get pulled aside and are helping them. While that's happening, we had a shelter lined up to get to her because all the work that we do, we have everything lined up ahead of time. We don't just float in willy-nilly and, think by pulling somebody out and going, yay, aren't we awesome, and then moving on. We've helped anyone because we haven't, right? Now the psalmist says this, he brought us out of the miry clay, but he also set our feet on a rock to stay. Rescue, recovery, all that stuff's part of a longer process that when we go into communities and the work we do is part of the training and even the big search. And so we get her to the shelter that said they were going to take her. For weeks they were in this process. We get to the door and the shelter says, no, we're not going to take her now, which infuriated me, right? But you got to problem solve on the spot. She goes, look, Mike knows where I'm at. I need groceries at our apartment, though, because we don't have anything. So they go grocery shopping. And as they're grocery shopping, again, the books have been throughout the whole community, all the restaurants and 7-Elevens and Dollar General stores and hotel casino workers and security, main security places and all the casinos are now working with us. So some of the casinos use their facial recognition technology to help us find these kids if they're in the casino. It's great. The city's really rallied behind this. And so as we're connecting all these people in and as we're in this grocery store, word's out on the kids we're looking for and they're in the book and that the outreach is legit and they really will help you. A girl literally in the grocery store comes up to the ladies who are with her shopping in the grocery store with her hand raised saying, I'm one of the kids in that book. Help me. There's 3, right? 3 situations from one trip to Starbucks. I think Starbucks owes me a free gift card or something for, talking about this. But there's her missing poster. So we're getting her help. The other girl shows up. But then as we're working with her that is in the grocery store thumbing through our book, she sees one of the girls. We know the backstory, but we didn't tell the community. She was being exploited in a really horrendous way. Next slide. Really needing help. This guy was 30 years old. She was 14 years old. All that money in his hand, she just made him previous that morning, right? She goes, I know where she's at. He tried to recruit me last night. I know exact apartment number where she's at. I'll help you with that. 4 recoveries out of one trip to that Starbucks, right? We were able to get her out of that situation. Now, she wasn't like, oh, you found me, you saved me. Again, there's a whole process of real emotional healing that needs to go into place. I want to emphasize that, even though we don't have time to train on that today, that it's important that you know that we're not just running around grabbing people and then they're free and clear, right? Another reason the church is so important to mobilize the resources needed to help. So as we get her out of her situation, we're getting to the apartment of the young girl that we originally got in that Starbucks. And as the ladies are bringing the groceries up to her apartment and they go in, there's 4 more missing kids in that apartment that were recovered. 8 recoveries and traffic victims out of one tall blonde coffee trip to Starbucks, right? God orchestrated all that, right? That whole morning. I have been doing this for a lot of years, and this just happened, and it's the only time I've ever had anything like that happen. But you know what? It would have never happened if the community of Las Vegas and the churches involved and the people working with us weren't present in the middle of the need. That's the whole purpose of the church. And we've had ongoing work in that neighborhood, that area, numerous traffic victims recovered out of those same apartments right around where she was. And then circling back around, that couple whose daughter was there, next slide, we'll get through there. The mom somehow reached her and got her phone number and gave it to me, and I started texting her, and her exploiters they were selling her out of this RV, right? And she was completely physically abused so bad that when we finally got her out, she had basically 2 weeks to live from the infection she had from the abuse she was taking. But I received a message from her about 8 months ago via social media, and it was she hated me when we first did that because I had her drugged up. She thought I was her dealer, all that fun stuff. But God has done a miraculous work in her life. She just had a beautiful baby, and God is doing incredible things as we continue to work with her through the healing process. But we have ongoing work that we do in that. The next slide in here, you'll see the girl after, a couple of pictures. Just slide through a couple of the girls we recovered through the process of this one search in Las Vegas. And we're based in Las Vegas, but we do these all over the country. We work all over the country. Free International started with just my wife and I, and we have 20 missionaries now on our team. Everyone in Free International is self-funded. So any money that ever goes to Free International goes to the work that's going on, not to anyone's salary. It's a great thing with missions is we have people who are full-time committed to everything we're doing without Free International having to spend that money. In fact, I had an opportunity a couple times to present to all the attorneys general of the United States of America. And one of them came up to me after having researched this and everything, and it wasn't like he didn't believe us. He just goes, man, there's no way you're doing everything you're doing with that amount of money coming in. He goes, you do all you're doing on less money than I make in a year as a household. How do you do it? Well, that's why we were there. The church, rightly mobilized, gives a major impact to this world to find those who are being exploited. He said, man, you guys are doing, he said, prime rib work on a ramen noodle budget. I like that, right? I'm going to put that on my business card, And it's true. But it's true because the church, rightly mobilized, makes a major impact. So we're able to find all these kids over the years. It's important. Resources have begun to flow our way. A couple years ago, an organization called Speed the Light, some of you may or may not know that, had come to us and said, hey, we want to help you guys. Is there anything we can provide you? And they provided for us 2 mobile command centers, 48-foot custom mobile command centers. We have 10 computer labs in there. Beds go up into the wall. The whole place is whiteboard. The law enforcement in Las Vegas can't work with us enough because they just want to hang out in our mobile command center and do work with us, right? And so it's awesome. We do all sorts of work out of there. It's separated all awesome. And when you guys come to Las Vegas to do a missions trip with us, which you will next year sometime, you'll be able to work out of there as well. The back area is all coordinated off. We do medical out of there. We can do tattoo removal, have done HIV testing, all sorts of different work, or federal law enforcement will work on one side with the cases, and we'll work on the front side helping those who have just been recovered receive the help that they need. When we travel to different cities and areas of the country, we can self-contain out of there. It's awesome, and it's been so effective. It's been award-winning. The mayor of Las Vegas gave us a major award for the work we're doing in Las Vegas on trafficking, all because we can create a point of contact to which the church has a logical presence in neighborhoods they normally aren't, so that the love that is in us through Christ can be shared into those vulnerable situations so that those who are being exploited might find freedom. That's what we do. Now, Speed the Light, again, is picking us up, and next year we are getting $1.4 million worth of new equipment. We're getting 2 mobile medical units, and one of the mobile medical units is going to be run by a couple that 5 years ago came to Vegas. Their daughter was a leader in their youth group in Montana. And very long story, very short, ended up being abused and trafficked in unspeakable ways. They came to Vegas. God put us together. We found their daughter. Their daughter's doing amazing. And now they just joined the Free International team as 2 medical practitioners that are going to run one of our mobile medical units, providing some great points of contact in areas of the country that need help. There's a couple things you can get into any neighborhood, no matter what the complexion of your skin is. A food truck, right? Food trucks are welcome. Any neighborhood, especially at those times of nights when all the bars and everything are letting out, right? Food trucks and medical. And so we're using that as a way to be logically present in neighborhoods we don't consistently have, and then wrap support around churches that don't normally have resources. So out of the $1.4 million, though, we have, I asked Sean, I go, how was I today? Because I'm horrible at asking for money. We have $30,000 we have to raise very shortly to do that, which is we're getting 9 mobile medical units, or 9 mobile units like this, doing different things, which are $150,000 and up a piece, right? And we're getting them for basically, I got a matching funds grant, $3,000 will buy us a unit. $3,000 will provide a point of contact in places around the country. And we're working with a group out of Minnesota to get a 10th unit that we can use in this area from Minneapolis into the Bakken and back again to reach the vulnerable and the exploited. So my ask to you is, if that's something you can help provide, it'd be awesome. In fact, I'll fly you to Vegas myself to hang out and show you what we're doing if you can help us get past that amount, so that next year, the $1.4 million worth of equipment we use, we can already hit the ground running to find more people, to provide more services. Because how many of you know, just because services are available, it doesn't always make them accessible. We have a lot of available people in this room with a lot of broad skill sets. So if we can take what's available and make it accessible to those who need it, we're going to see amazing stories told like the one in that neighborhood. It's important for us, as I mentioned this to you today, to know that we are committed to you as a church. This is my church. This is home church for me. It's been a while since I've been here. But who I am was crafted, not this side this was a parking lot. The other side of the building was crafted, right? But we are here to reach the vulnerable around here, to minister to men who are struggling in their loneliness and their time of need, to find the one. The guy who runs our school assembly program said, Mike, when we got involved with you guys, it was frustrating to know all that was going on, the huge amount of people who we were seeing, even working with law enforcement and other groups that were being exploited. But we also began to realize that one was a very big number, finding the one. In fact, that's why you see a 1-for-1 on our mobile unit here. 1-for-1. One organization, one church, reaching the one until everyone is free. That's our purpose. God is really setting the stage for big things to happen. We are part of a thing called Strike Out Slavery with Albert and Didi Pujols, so Major League Baseball. We were cherry-picked as one of the few groups in the world that they vetted and trusted that were doing real boots-on-the-ground work. And so every year we get to be in ballparks all over the country, talking about human trafficking in a way that the league now is likely in the next year and a half going to adopt. Strike Out Slavery as a main thing that they do. In fact, it was just awarded at the UN for the work that's going on. And you know what's cool about Strike Out Slavery is out of the 12 groups, international groups all over the world that are part of Strike Out Slavery, only 2 of them aren't missions organizations, right? They're all faith-based groups. So when we gather to educate that 30,000 people in that ballpark, it's with people just like us. It feels like church almost. It's not. You know, we're not pushing anything other than a topical discussion. But now, at this year's Strike Out Slaveries, they started pushing our big search as a takeaway in every ballpark in the city to be able to mobilize primarily the faith community to reach the vulnerable in every major league ballpark city in the country, with the mobile units, with the church, reaching the one until everyone is free. Thank you guys so much for being present in this city. There's all sorts of different stories that brought you here to Williston, North Dakota. But I know God has brought you here not just to earn a living, but to make an impact in a city that's reaching the world. Whether it's buying 30 goats for families that desperately need to self-sustain, whether it's helping us purchase mobile units that allow us to be present, or whether it's putting your work boots on with us right here in these oil fields to reach those who are vulnerable and exploited. I know God has us here, all of us, to reach the one until every one is free. Heavenly Father, thank you for this church. Will you bless them and keep them and cause your face to shine upon them and give them peace as they pursue you and your will. Lord, I pray a special prayer in the area I didn't mean to talk about today, didn't need to, but if there are people in this room who are struggling with addictions to pornography, things that just are eating us up inside, I ask that we know there is no condemnation for those who are in you, Christ Jesus. I ask that you allow us to see the harm that is done so that we might repent, we might reconcile in our families, we might become a new creation in Christ, bearing your light to this world without those hindrances. Lord, I pray a special prayer here today too, Lord, for those who might be in currently abusive situations. Lord, I ask that you speak into their hearts and life. You do not have to be in that situation, and it is not your fault. Lord, I ask that you give courage into that you bring help into that abuse. Lord, that you give this church the ability to minister those who are going through difficult situations. Lord, heal today, this morning. heal our hearts, heal our minds. Use us to reach this community for you. In your holy, holy, holy name, amen.
Mike, as you were praying that prayer, it just reminded me that we live stream our services, and then it's put on YouTube. And I just wonder if God in his providence, somebody's going to see this. And if that's you, if you're watching online, if you reach out to us as a church, we will connect you with Mike and with Free International so you can find that freedom.